The morning the grain elevator manager told Margaret Voss he couldn't take her Spelt, she was standing in his cramped office with dirt under her fingernails and 140 acres ready to harvest. 3 years earlier, at this same desk, the county extension agent had called her planting decision agricultural suicide. Now Paul Hendricks, who'd bought her wheat for 17 years, was shaking his head like she'd brought him a truckload of rocks. "I can't process it, Maggie. Equipment's not set up for ancient grains." You knew that. She had known, had prepared. But standing there with her harvest plan collapsing, the weight of 3 years of mockery settled on her shoulders like wet wool. "I'll find someone else. Good luck. You're gonna need it." But that was the end, not the beginning. The beginning was easier to pinpoint. The morning her grandmother's leather journal fell out of a box in the attic, 3 years and 4 months before Paul Hendricks failed her. Margaret had been clearing her mother's things, breast cancer, fast and merciless, when the journal landed at her feet. The handwriting was cramped, practical. Seed-saving records, planting dates, yield notes from 1943 through 1967. And on page 47, underlined twice, Spelt holds when wheat fails. Father was right about the old grains. They remember how to survive. Her husband Garrett found her on the attic floor 2 hours later, journal open in her lap. "You okay?" Grandma Voss grew Spelt. "Okay." During the drought years, when everyone else's wheat died, Garrett crouched beside her, knees cracking. They'd been married 19 years. He knew her faces. This one meant she decided something. "Maggie, don't. I haven't said anything. You're thinking it loud enough." She was. The farm was hemorrhaging money. Conventional wheat prices had collapsed. Input cost had tripled. And the Dakota's drought of 2 years prior had taught her that modern varieties bred for perfect conditions died ugly when conditions stopped being perfect. Her grandmother's words sat in her mind like a stone in still water, sending out ripples. At the extension office the following Tuesday, Agent Mitchell Brennan looked at her over his reading glasses like she'd announced a plan to grow marijuana. "Spelt." "Yes." "Margaret, I'm going to be straight with you. That's agricultural suicide. You said that about no-till too. 10 years ago." His face reddened. "This is different. There's no market. No infrastructure. You can't sell it locally. Paul can't process it. You'd have to ship it out of state, if you could even find a buyer. The margins are, my grandmother. Your grandmother farmed in a different era. This is modern agriculture. We have better varieties, better inputs, better data." Margaret looked at the posters on his wall, yield charts, chemical application schedules, seed company logos. Her grandmother had farmed with chickens and crop rotation and seeds saved in mason jars. Had fed her family through years that broke bigger operations. "I'm planting 40 acres this fall. Wanted to let you know." Mitchell leaned back, arms crossed. "I can't support this officially. When it fails, and it will fail, don't expect a bailout conversation." She stood. Noted. At the co-op the next week, buying soil amendments, she ran into Dale Pritchard. Dale farmed 800 acres and spoke at the regional grain meetings. His operation was the model everyone referenced. "Heard you're going Spelt," he said, loud enough for the checkout line to hear. "That true?" "It is." "Maggie, that's a boutique crop. Hobby farm stuff. You can't make real money on ancient grains." "We'll see. I'm serious. I've got the data. The university studies. Modern wheat varieties outperform by 30%. Spelt's a museum piece. Then you won't mind if I experiment." He laughed, but it wasn't kind. "Your funeral? Hey, Charlie." He called to the feed store owner. "Maggie's growing Spelt. Better stock up on artisan bread flour." The laughter followed her to the truck. Garrett didn't laugh. He just got quiet, the way he did when he was calculating risk. That night at dinner, reheated casserole from the church ladies who'd brought food after the funeral, he set down his fork. "How much are we spending?" "Seeds $1,200. Testing and amendments another $800. Equipment rentals covered. We can use the regular grain drill." "And if Mitchell's right? If there's no buyer?" Margaret met his eyes. "Then I'm wrong. And we're out 2,000. But if he's wrong, that's a big if. So is no-till. So is rotational grazing when Daddy switched. Every time farming changes, someone says it's suicide right up until it's normal." Their daughter Becca called that Sunday from Minneapolis, where she was finishing her PhD in environmental science. The Spelt came up in November, like something remembering an old pattern. Margaret walked the field every morning, watching the germination, even, strong, darker green than the hybrid wheat in neighboring fields. By December, when the first hard freeze came through, her crop stood thick enough to prevent erosion, deep-rooted enough to hold soil that her neighbors' fields lost to wind. Looking decent, Garrett admitted. Just that. He'd learned, over 19 years, that Margaret's instincts deserved patience. By March, the difference was visible from the road. Her 40 acres stood dense and vigorous while Dale Pritchard's showcase field, 500 acres of premium certified seed, showed patchy growth and winter kill. Margaret said nothing. Let the land speak. Mitchell Brennan drove past twice that week, slowing down but not stopping. At church, Dale's wife Linda asked pointed questions about Margaret's hobby project, loud enough for the fellowship hall to hear. I just think it's interesting, Linda said, coffee cup held like a weapon, that some people have time for experiments when the rest of us are trying to run profitable operations. Margaret was slicing cake for the bake sale. Didn't look up. Some experiments become standard practice. Linda, your husband uses no-till now, doesn't he? That's completely different. Is it? The room got quiet. Linda's face flushed red. Well, some of us prioritize feeding the world over indulging nostalgia. Margaret set down the knife, met Linda's eyes with the level calm she'd inherited from 3 generations of farm women who'd survived worse than mean church ladies. Some of us prioritize keeping our farms alive when the climate keeps changing. But we all do what we think is right. She handed Linda a slice of cake. Linda took it because refusing would have been too obvious, but the hate in her eyes was clear. By April, Margaret Spelt was headed out beautifully. Thick heads, strong stalks, disease-free. The conventional wheat fields showed rust, aphid pressure, and the telltale yellowing that meant nitrogen deficiency despite heavy applications. Margaret's soil tests showed her spelt had accessed nutrients 18 inches deeper than modern wheat varieties could reach. The root systems her grandmother had valued were proving their worth. At the co-op, Charlie Jenkins pulled her aside. Maggie, I gotta ask, what did you do different? Your field looks like magazine cover material. Old variety. Deep roots. Soil management. Dale's field looks rough. He followed every protocol. Sometimes protocols are the problem. Charlie glanced around, lowered his voice. Keep that between us. But you might be onto something. The harvest came in early July. Margaret rented a combine from a small custom operation in Indiana that specialized in ancient grains. The operator, a man named Tom Chun, walked her field before cutting and whistled low. 32 bushels an acre, I'd estimate. Maybe 34. That's exceptional for spelt. What's your management system? Minimal input. Compost. Cover crops. Let the variety do what it was bred to do. You organic certified? Not yet. Transitioning. You should finish that. Organic spelt at this quality. You could get premium pricing. He paused. If you can find a right buyer. That was the problem. Margaret had called 17 grain brokers, 3 organic co-ops, and 11 bakeries. Most didn't recognize spelt. The ones that did said they already had suppliers. One buyer in Oregon offered a price so low it wouldn't cover trucking costs. Keep trying, Tom said as he climbed into the combine cab. Good product always finds a market. Just takes time. The harvest yielded 33 bushels per acre, clean and beautiful. Garrett helped her load it into the on-farm storage she'd retrofitted for small grains. They stood together looking at the bins, 5,500 bushels of spelt with nowhere to go. We'll find someone, Garrett said. Before we need the cash for fall planting? He didn't answer. They both knew the timeline. That evening, Becca called. She'd seen Margaret's photos of the harvest on the family text thread. Mom, that looks incredible. Thanks, honey. Have you found a buyer? Still looking. A pause. I might know someone. My advisor's husband owns a bakery supply company in Minneapolis. They do a lot of artisan wholesale. Want me to ask? Yes, please. 2 days later, Becca called back. Mom, Marcus wants samples. He's interested. Says if the protein content and baking quality are right, he could use it. Margaret overnight shipped 5 pounds of grain. Waited. On the 4th day, Marcus Lindstrom called her directly. Mrs. Voss, I had our mill tester spelt. The protein's exceptional, 14.8%. The gluten structure is exactly what artisan bakers need. Where'd you get this seed stock? Heritage variety. My grandmother's records. It's remarkable. I'd like to buy your full harvest. $42 per bushel. Margaret did the math in her head. Conventional wheat was fetching $6. That seems high. It's not high. It's fair for this quality. I've got 3 bakery chains asking for reliable Spelt suppliers. You've got the best I've tested in 5 years. When do you need delivery? As soon as possible. I'll arrange trucking. She hung up, stood in the kitchen, staring at the numbers she'd written. $231,000 from 40 acres. Nearly 6 times what conventional wheat would have brought. Garrett found her there, tears on her weathered face. Maggie. We sold it. All of it. He pulled her into his arms. This quiet man who doubted and supported in equal measure. Told you the land tells you. You didn't believe me. I believed you believed. That counts. Word spread fast. Small towns have no secrets. By the time the semi-truck pulled into her farm 2 weeks later, neighbors lined the road, watching the loadout. Mitchell Brennan showed up, clipboard in hand, face carefully neutral. Margaret, heard you found a buyer. I did. Mind if I ask the price? She told him, watched his face go through several expressions before settling on professional interest. That's significant. I'd like to talk to you about a case study. Document the management practices, the variety, the market development. This could be important for other farmers. I'll think about it. Dale Pritchard didn't come by, but Linda stopped Margaret after church 2 Sundays later, voice stiff, but genuine. Dale says your harvest went well. Congratulations. Thank you. He's considering trying some alternative grains. Wanted to know if you talked to him about sourcing seed. Margaret considered. Remembered the laughter at the co-op, the comments about hobby farming. Also remembered that farming was hard for everyone. That pride could strangle learning. That she'd been where Dale was, desperate for something different. Tell him to call me. That fall, Margaret planted 80 acres of Spelt. Garrett didn't argue. Becca came home for Thanksgiving and walked the fields, her city clothes incongruous against the rural backdrop. You were right, Mom. About all of it. I was lucky. Good timing, good buyer. No, you listened to something everyone else ignored. That's not luck. But the real transformation was still coming. In January, Marcus called with a proposal that would reshape everything. Margaret stood in the same kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, listening to an offer that proved her grandmother's wisdom could build futures, not just survive them. Marcus Lindstrom arrived in March with 2 executives from Heartland Bakery, a regional chain with 47 locations across 5 states. They sat at Margaret's kitchen table, expensive shoes incongruous on her worn linoleum, and explained they had a problem. Consumer demand for ancient grains is up 38%, Marcus said. But supply chain reliability is terrible. Most small farmers can't scale. Most large operations won't touch specialty grains. Sarah Park, Heartland CEO, leaned forward. We've tested your Spelt in 18 bakery trials. Customers call it the best bread they've ever had. We want exclusive supply rights. For how much grain? Margaret asked. All you can grow. And we want to build a processing facility here. On your farm. Garrett's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. You want to build what? A micro mill and bakery facility, Sarah said. 5,000 square feet. We'd lease 2 acres from you, process your grain on-site, and supply our chain from here. You'd get lease income plus premium grain prices plus consultation fees. We'd employ 15 people locally. Margaret looked at the blueprints they'd spread across her table, the building site marked on her southeastern field, near the road. Her grandmother's words echoed. Good work always finds its value. What happens if my yields drop? If I can't supply enough? Then we work with other farmers you mentor, Marcus said. You'd help them convert acreage, verify quality, manage the cooperative supply. We're not just buying grain, Margaret. We're buying your expertise. She took 3 days to decide, spent them walking the fields and reading her grandmother's journal cover to cover. The entry from July 1951 decided her. Sold seed Spelt to 3 neighbors today. Father said knowledge hoarded is knowledge wasted. If the old grains survive, they survive because we share them. She called Sarah Park on a Thursday morning. Let's do it. The county commissioners approved the facility construction in May, a process that would have taken months if Dale Pritchard hadn't spoken at the hearing, explaining how Margaret's success had convinced him to diversify 75 acres. She saw what we couldn't, he'd said. The county should support this. Mitchell Brennan showed up the day they broke ground, not with a clipboard but with coffee and genuine humility. I was wrong, he said. watching the excavators work. About all of it. I'd like to make it right. Maybe work with you on a regional program. Ancient grains, soil health, climate resilience. You called it agricultural suicide. I did. I was an ass. Margaret sipped her coffee, considered. You can help. But the farmers I'm training get priority. No more dismissing women's knowledge as nostalgia. Deal. By October, the facility was operational. Gleaming stainless steel and climate-controlled storage. The smell of fresh milled flour rich in the autumn air. Heartland hired locally. Charlie Jenkins's daughter as operations manager. 2 of Margaret's neighbors as mill operators. Becca, who'd quit her PhD program, as sustainability coordinator. I can finish the degree later, Becca said, standing in the facility's tasting kitchen. This matters more. You built something, Mom. I want to help it grow. Margaret's second harvest, from 80 acres, brought 40,000 bushels. The facility processed it all, plus grain from 7 other farmers she'd mentored through conversion. The bread appeared in heartland locations that November, heritage Spelt, grown by family farmers who remember how. The loaves sold out in 3 days. By spring, Margaret had a waiting list of 43 farmers wanting consultation. She raised her fees, not from greed but from necessity, because her time became currency when everyone suddenly wanted what they'd mocked 3 years earlier. She hired 2 assistants, turned her barn's upper floor into a classroom, taught monthly workshops on seed selection and soil management. Linda Pritchard attended one, sat in back, took careful notes. After, she approached Margaret with the particular stiffness of pride swallowing itself. I was cruel to you. At church. I'm sorry. You were scared. For Dale, for your farm. I understand. No, I was mean because you were doing something I didn't understand. That's on me. Margaret handed her a packet of information. Dale's doing good work with his test plots. He asked good questions. You got a good farm, Linda. Linda's eyes watered. Thank you. The local paper ran a feature in June. From mockery to model. How one farmer's suicide crop transformed rural economy. Mitchell Brennan was quoted extensively, explaining how Margaret's methods demonstrated climate adaptation principles the Extension Office was now promoting. Dale Pritchard's photo showed him standing in his 40-acre Spelt field, grinning. The state agricultural department called in July, asking Margaret to speak at the annual conference. She did, standing before 300 farmers, telling them about her grandmother's journal and the power of listening to what the land remembered. I didn't invent anything, she said. I just trusted that the old ways survive because they worked. Sometimes innovation is really just memory with the courage to try again. The standing ovation surprised her. The crying farmers who approached afterward, desperate for hope, for direction, for permission to trust their own instincts, humbled her. That evening, she walked her fields with Garrett, their hands linked the way they'd been for 20 years. The Spelt rustled in the June breeze, heavy-headed and prosperous. Beyond her property line, she could see 5 other farms now growing ancient grains, small revolutions spreading outward. Your grandmother would be proud, Garrett said. She'd say I took too long to listen. Maybe, but you listened. That's what matters. The facility hummed in the distance, lights bright as it ran the evening shift. 15 jobs that hadn't existed 2 years ago. 7 farms stabilized. 1 county beginning to remember that expertise sometimes wore overalls and spoke with a woman's voice. Margaret Voss didn't need vindication anymore. She had something better. She had her grandmother's journal tucked in her pocket, soil under her fingernails, and fields that proved the only agricultural suicide was forgetting what the land had always known. The old grain survived. So did she. And now, because she'd been stubborn enough to plant them, so would others.